Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Well, Tony, I went out, had a lovely final day of 2024, got to go shoot a story with the Ohio State Marching Band. We'll have up a little later on today. And then as I'm walking back to the train station to catch the metro back from like way up past Pasadena back down to downtown, what do I see, Tony?
What?
An In-N-Out burger. And I thought, oh, friends.
Did you? Did you partake?
Is that a serious question?
Did you do a 4x4?
Does the Pope poop in the woods? No. Just a 2x2. Double, okay. Tony. Animal right. Style, as always.
Okay. All right. Well, I didn't care to know that.
Well, you shouldn't have asked then.
You asked me to ask. Anyway. Welcome, everybody. We are here, as you can see behind us. We got the Rose Bowl stuff going on. We are here at the Media Hotel getting ready for the Rose Bowl. We will take you guys to the Fiesta Bowl, figuratively.
Not offer not valid in the state of California.
But while we're here, we should talk about the Rose Bowl. If you guys have some questions, throw them in the chat. You got some super chats. Definitely throw those in the chats, and we'll get to those right away. Tom, so we've been here for an abbreviated amount of time. I don't know. Has it been 2 days? This is our third day?
It's been like 48 hours almost.
Exactly. Tuesday. So we got here Sunday night.
We got here Sunday. Yeah. So we've been here just over 48 hours.
Yeah. So in that time, I don't know that we've learned anything that changes my opinion on this game. It has been interesting to talk to both teams and the amount of confidence coming from both teams you would expect, but there are some moments, some areas where it feels like Oregon believes they can take advantage of it. And there's been some talk about Davison Igbinosun as one of those areas. And it feels like that was going to be the plan in the last game, but then Denzel Burke started giving up catches, and they kind of went away from what they were planning to do. When you look at this game, I kind of expect the Oregon passing game to make Davison Igbinosun hold them, try to draw some penalties. And also, you know what? We don't need to just get penalties from him. We can attack him and be successful catching the ball. So I think he's going to have a pretty busy day, and there's a lot on the line for him and for the team, depending on how he performs in this one.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like he might be one of the main characters of that Rose Bowl, one way or the other, because they go after him and they complete passes. You can become the main character in the Denzel Burke game one kind of way. You get called for a bunch of pass interference penalties. You can become a main character in the way that he has been at a couple times in the past. Or if you have a big game, get an interception, have some nice pass breakups, get a third down stop, be the key part of a third down stop. Well, you could be the main character in a very positive way. It just feels like Oregon is looking at him and going, there are not really a weak spots on this Ohio State defense.
Right.
There are not like glaring holes. Like when we watch Tennessee, we're like, oh yeah, they're going to pick on that dude. And guess what? They picked on that dude. And I don't know that you look at the Ohio State defense and say, there you go. That's who you're going after. Davison Igbinosun is not one of the, not the better corner, not the best corner on the team, certainly. So it seems like they could, he's going to be probably where they may look. I think you're going to look at him. And I think you might have a decently big game out of Terrence Ferguson, or the tight end. It feels like he might be someone that they think they can get a little bit of a matchup advantage on at places.
Well, and Terrence Ferguson last time, four catches, 62 yards, including a long of 30-something. He was 32. He was one of their 4 receptions of 30 yards, and that was, I believe, a screen. Was that the fourth down screen, maybe?
Yeah.
And just a little drag thing. That not only do the linebackers or the safeties have to cover him, you have to tackle him, and they do a really, really good job of throwing screens to him, getting him involved in that, where he is talented enough and athletic enough to run down the seam, run down the field, run deep routes, things like that. But it almost feels like he's most effective running those screens, and when he's got 2 or 3 blockers in front of him, like you can't even get to him, and so they do a really good job with that. I think that's an underrated thing that we haven't. I don't know that many people are talking about how you have to contain Terrence Ferguson, because you can talk about Tez Johnson, and we will, Trayshawn Holden and Evan Stewart, everybody else. but this guy just continues to produce and score and do whatever that is needed. And while the secondary is focused on all of these speed guys, there goes Terrence Ferguson outrunning linebackers on a screenplay.
Well, and we saw him, I think the first time we saw that was maybe in the Michigan State game the week before the Ohio State game. And it was just, they just kind of like they show action one way and just sort of leak him out the backside. And he had, I think, a 50 or 60 yarder on a ball that was in the air for about 3 yards. And then it was just kind of watch this big dude run down the field faster than you'd expect. And like you said, in the Big Ten championship game, there were a couple of times they took shots to him 35, 40 yards down the field. These are spots where you don't normally expect to find a tight end. It's like when bull sharks swim up freshwater rivers, and it's like, what is that doing here? Also, it looks dangerous. Yeah. Like that's kind of Terrence Ferguson he's in these places where you don't normally expect to find a tight end, and also he looks like he is potentially dangerous.
Don't noodle in those waters.
Yes, no,
do not.
No.
Stick to the lakes and the streams that you're used to.
That's a warning about waterfalls. Actually,
my bad. So with Dylan Gabriel being kind of the starting point for this passing game, I've just been so impressed watching how calm he is. How he has seen everything. He's going to be perhaps the all-time leading yardage guy. Is that Cam Ward right now or something? But like this guy has been around forever, has started forever, has seen everything that you could possibly see, and yet Ohio State has to do some things differently than they did last time against him. And we know he threw for 360 something yards. In the last 341 yards, he was 23 of 34, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. There were no turnovers for Oregon in that game. And if they can't allow him to do this again, barring we're just trying to catch up type of thing, and then you're just throwing it all over the place.
Yeah.
This came in the regular doing of the offense. It's like boom, 340 yards, not trying to throw the ball, it's just the regular course of what they were doing. And for that to happen again, I said it earlier today, like, yes, the Ohio State defense could play the same game they did last time and win because of some other things. But this Ohio State defense shouldn't be giving up 341 yards passing in this game to anybody. Their second highest total given up is 201 yards to Northwestern. And other than that, like they are at the top of the nation in terms of yards per attempt, completion percentage, all of those things. And yet you have this outlier. So it's like, what is the real thing here? Is the Ohio State, was this an outlier? Mm-hmm. Because I know talking to some of the Oregon people, they kind of feel like Oregon's performance in that was the outlier. And you look at what they've done before and since, it's like they played their best game against their best opponent, and that is so rare.
Yeah, and it is. And I want to pick up that thought after we did a super chat from Gavin. Is the key to winning throwing the ball downfield, especially to JJ? Killed Tennessee with it in the beginning and opened up a lot in the run game.
Yeah, throwing the ball downfield. It will be interesting to see how they handled Jeremiah Smith, because watching that Tennessee game live, we've said it before, you're just immediately looking, is there a safety over top? And if not, like, why not? And if they don't move somebody over, it's like, why are you not throwing it to him right now? Like, I know you got to snap the ball, but
the center is not legally able to pass the ball. Sorry.
But yeah, I don't expect Oregon to make the same mistakes that Tennessee made, but I also don't know that you're just going to bracket him the entire time, because you want to do some other things and you change some things up. But again, I think any of these three guys, any of the three receivers, when they have their opportunities, if they're one-on-one, make that guy a quick read, an earlier read in the progression, and take advantage of the skills that you have. And who is the weakest of the Oregon corners? I don't know that there's necessarily a weaker one. They're both kind of above average to they're both good to above average type of guys, where they're not the biggest guys, and Ohio State has some big receivers. So I would think the downfield stuff has been working, so why not keep going with it? Yeah,
and there are ways to work around bracketing. I mean, first of all, as you said, you can't bracket on every play, because number one, then you become very predictable, and then it's I asked Chip Kelly and Will Howard about this. And it was like, well, what do you do when you see him being bracketed, and how do you is that something you can take advantage of as a play caller? And Chip Kelly said no, because you don't really know when it's going to happen. So that's really up to Will, and how Will's done a pretty good job with it. If you get to the point where you're doing it every single play, well, then it is predictable. And then the guy upstairs with the play sheet the size of a Denny's menu and, in encyclopedic understanding of football from the last 30 years, then he can pick you apart. And there are, however, ways to work around it. Even if it is happening, if I talked to Ross Fulton about this on the live episode we did last night, if you haven't gone back and watched that, when this is done, don't waste your time. We all know Penn State's going to win. Go ahead, Tony, Kevin, and make sure you also have me dub in. We all know Boise State's going to win. So either one, just dub whichever one is correct later. Baba Booey, what does that even mean? You can, if you put Emeka Ibuka and Jeremiah Smith on the same side of the field, you can't bracket both. They're both on the same side of the field. So you can do stuff with formation. And, they certainly have been moving Jeremiah Smith around more to make it harder. Again, if you're predictable, then it makes it easier for the opponent to defend you, or for the opposing offense to attack you, if we're talking about on defense. So you move guys around, you change formations, you put, hey, this guy's normally in the slot on the other side of the field. Well, now these guys are together. All this kind of stuff. There are workarounds for all of this. It's just, you're going to hear phrases like chess match a whole lot between, on the broadcast, I'm sure, because it's going to be the coordinators on both sides trying to, out X's and O each other and out rock, paper, scissors each other. Super chat from Murphy Serafino, expecting a lot of QB run, read option calls out of Chip tomorrow. Make them defend the extra player and Howard. I know that's something you've been talking about a bunch.
Yeah. I mean, to help the running game out, to get it going, you talk about should they throw to run? I think they can also option to run and make Will Howard a part of that. They haven't done a ton of it, but these are the games where you see more quarterback runs because you need everything that you can get. And Will Howard can run. We're still waiting for that long run. He had a 20-something yarder against Penn State, and then slid down and had some success against Oregon. He is able to go a long way. They don't need a 70-yarder out of him. They just need some, 7-yarders here or there to keep Oregon honest. And every time I'm expecting him to run more, it doesn't necessarily happen, and it's like, then you'll see, I don't know, a Purdue or something where he's got 9 or 10 carries. And it's like, what is that? But I do think maybe, is this a thing right out of the gate, or is it a thing where it's out of the gate on the third quarter because they weren't able to run it? Because I'm not convinced that they won't be able to run the ball in this one, because we have seen enough of Oregon's defense. They've given up 3 games this year of 200 yards rushing. So of the 8 teams in the playoffs right now, they have given up total 8 games of 200 yards rushing. Oregon is responsible for 3 of those. Georgia is responsible for 2 of those. Notre Dame is responsible for 2 of those against Army and Navy, so you can forgive those. And then Boise State gave up like 217 yards rushing to UNLV, which I don't know that you can forgive. And if you can –
remember when I said Penn State was going to win?
So it might be another 292-yard day for Penn State tonight. But if Ohio State can't run against Oregon, and they could not last time, like that's a concern. But they lost Josh Simmons in that game, and that changed everything. This one, if they run for the same amount of yards, but it's more consistent than it was, because without that 57-yarder or whatever for TreVeyon Henderson, they were like 2 or 3 yards per carry. If they're at 4 or 5 and there's the long of is 26, I feel pretty good about Ohio State's chances.
Right. You would almost, it seems counterintuitive, but you would rather be able to run consistently for 4 and have a long of 12 than run for consistently for 2.5 and have a long of 60. You'd rather get there with a consistent, just stay on schedule running attack. And I think there's an opportunity there. I think you're going to see a different Ohio State running attack than you saw against Oregon the first time. Again, talked to Ross Fulton about this on last night's live show. Once again, I will plug that for you. As soon as we're done, go ahead and find that on our YouTube channel. But Ross talked about the fact that, you get them outside, boy, it is a different game. You're probably not going to find a ton of success running between the tackles. You got to do it sometimes because, again, you have to use the whole whole field. You can't just completely give up on something. But you have a lot of opportunity outside, and that's something that these backs can sometimes take advantage of. Just, they've had a lot of success with just kind of those little quick toss plays, They've run that pause option a few times, stuff like that. You may see if you pick up 10 yards with some of those here and there, 12 yards here and there. Again, it doesn't need to be 80. If it's 80, I'm sure they would be happy to take it. But if you just pick up 8, 10 with those sometimes, and then you can get 4 between the tackles sometimes, that might be enough. And I saw Sue in the comments talking about where Oregon's run defense ranks. They are 55th in the country in yards per carry allowed, 4.01 yards per carry allowed for Oregon. 55th in the nation. Ohio State is 4th in the nation, 2.94 yards per carry. So, you hear that and you're like, well, it's only 1 yard a carry. How much does that matter? Well, one yard a carry is the difference between being in 2nd and 7 and 2nd and 6, and third and 4 and third and 2, and 1st and 10 and 4th and 1. So yeah, it makes a pretty big difference, that 1 extra yard.
Yeah, and they've given up some yards several times this season when they shouldn't necessarily give up yards. And so that's why I think with Ohio State's offense as a whole, then it wouldn't be a shock if they give up some yards. We got a super chat.
We do. From Raviatatube. I know I see that name every time, and I'm like, there's letters in there that I'm saying either too many or too few. What's up with people anointing Dan Lanning as the next Nick Saban? Personally, I think Ryan Day and the Bucs win big. I've seen the twinkle in his eye and serious business mindset being an edge. So Dan Lanning is the next Nick Saban because Dan Lanning is off the Kirby Smart tree, who's off the Nick Saban tree, and he coached at Alabama and he coached at Georgia, and he's won all his games this year. Now, this time last year, Dan Lanning was an idiot because Dan Lanning kept doing too much stupid stuff and going for it at times when he shouldn't go for it. And now when that works, you're a genius, and when that doesn't work, you're an idiot. Welcome to college football coaching. That's how it works.
I also think there's this fascination with Oregon and this flashiness, and it's a blinding light, and you don't necessarily see, like, nobody pays attention to Oregon enough to realize, you lost to Washington twice last year or whatever, and you've struggled against your rivals. It doesn't matter because nobody's paying attention to them nationally as much. Now they're starting to, but as Dan Lanning grows this thing, they will continue to. But you can get away with a lot at Oregon. You can get away with a lot more mistakes at Oregon as a head coach than you can at Ohio State.
Yes, that's true, because the historical expectation at Ohio State is up here, and the historical expectation at Oregon is like there. It's like there, but it's been growing slowly every year. If Ohio State wins this game, you just watch how fast Dan Lanning is a loser with whose Uncle Phil's pocketbook and is just giving him players, and he is wasting them because he's stupid and he's inexperienced and he can't win the big one.
Where does that come from? Like, are you saying like ESPN or
Oregon fans?
Oregon fans?
Yeah. No, he's a genius because he hasn't lost. As soon as he loses, he will no longer be a genius. Now, that might be tomorrow. That might be next season. We'll see. But he's the hot thing right now, and he may remain the hot thing. But it's your fourth down, your fake punt call is gutsy if you make it. If you're 6 inches short, then it was a stupid call, and you're pressing, and this is. This kind of goes back to the super chat and the look on Ryan Day's face, and the look on Ryan Day's face at the press conference. Dan Lanning is just smiling and happy, and Ryan Day is just kind of this very serious look. And if Ohio State wins, it will be because the look on Ryan Day's face at the press conference was that he was serious and locked in and focused. And if Ohio State loses, it's because the look on Ryan Day's face will have retroactively been, well, he was tight, and the team played tight, and that they reflect their leader, and their leader has failed the fan base once again. And it's just sort of like this narrative crafting stuff that happens. And I'm sure that we do this at times too. It's an easy thing to not you. It's an easy thing to fall into. Like, and sometimes you kind of do it sarcastically too. Like, Alabama and Michigan. Like, Alabama was missing a bunch of players today. Now, was it still fun to make fun of Alabama and Kirk Herbstreit for this team? It was like, don't worry, I fired a couple off myself, because guess what? It's funny to say, hey, it's too bad Michigan didn't face a more deserving team like Indiana or SMU. Guess what? Because that's funny. Because guess what? They really did some dumb stuff. ESPN did a couple weeks ago, and have just been doing nothing but stepping on rakes since then. And that's objectively funny. But the narrative thing is just like, all of this is a little bit stupid, and that's true of this guy's a genius right now. This is true of the Ryan Day will never win a football game ever again after the Michigan game. I mean, it's very easy to get caught up in the moment, and getting caught up in the moment is a very good way to end up being like, oh, whoa, didn't see that coming.
I'm just not sure if Oregon fans are to the point now where they expect championships, and if they don't get them, somebody needs to go and somebody needs to pay. Not like an Uncle, Phil pay.
They got a guy.
Well, also Phil needs to pay. Where I'm not sure they're to the point, because I think they still are enamored with Dan Lanning, and we're already talking about losing. Like, clearly they have not lost yet this year, but I think they're going to be more patient. Would be more patient with him, and continue to there's always next year, new roster coming in, a bunch of new guys. But eventually, like, if it doesn't happen, Georgia fans are getting tired of Kirby Smart before he won his. It's just the nature of the beast. If you're going to be part of the beast, and clearly Oregon is going to and is, then eventually the receipts will be there.
And I want to get to the super chat in a minute, but I think Kirby Smart. How long has it been? Kirby Smart hasn't won a national championship in 2 years. And Kirby Smart, how close is Kirby Smart to not having won a national championship in 3 years? I mean, he could have easily lost to Ohio State. He could have, he right now could very easily lose to Notre Dame tomorrow night. And then, Kirby Smart missed the playoff last year, and he lost in the first round this year. And has Kirby Smart lost? I mean, no one. There's not going to be a serious call for Kirby Smart to be fired. Serious call for Dan Lanning to be fired tomorrow if he loses. But neither of those guys is going to spend the offseason getting crowned the king of college football, and that can be, it can be the difference between. We saw what the margin of a game can be the first time Ohio State and Oregon played this year. It's like, well, if Will Howard slid 1 second earlier, Ohio State might win that game, or you don't have the penalty, and then obviously. I will yada for the Oregon people, if the Will Kazmarek thing is not ruled a completion and an interception, yada yada. Okay, we get it. Like, the point is that these games with very fine margins come down to one tip of a ball, one call, 1 second, whatever it is. Super chat from Fort Wayne Buckeye. I think this will be the Carnell Tate game, not necessarily the number of catches or total yards, but key conversions. That Oregon is keyed on J.J. Smith and Emeka Ibuka. Enjoy some beverages during the game tonight. Cheers and Happy New Year.
Yeah, I wrote what I know, what I think, what I wonder for the Rose Bowl game today, and at the end mentioned Carnell Tate with the idea that he's the third guy, right? And past third guys in this offense have been like Jamison Williams and Julian Fleming, and he is so far above that. Like, he's got 42 catches right now.
Jamison Williams, who is currently tearing up the NFL. Yes, go on.
But in terms of at Ohio State,
yes, I know. I know.
But so he's got 42 catches this year. That's the same number as like Johnny Dixon in 2018. That's more than Terry McLaurin in 2018. Like, that's as an outside receiver, the 42 catches in 2018 was the most for an outside receiver. That's what he's got this year. He is a guy that they can take advantage of, because he's going to be at times when the worst defensive back is on him, or the worst plan of attack is on him, he can make them pay. And I keep talking about one of the passes, the touchdown passes to Jeremiah Smith. Carnell Tate was as open, like he was breaking open as well. And I'm sure they've seen that since, and they've looked at that, and they know they have a matchup there. And he has been so good. He's been clutch. He's whenever his opportunity is there, he's always ready. He's always preparing himself, and that's a heck of a luxury to have.
He feels a little to me like Terry McLaurin when Terry McLaurin was at Ohio State. I mean, different type of player. Yeah. Terry McLaurin is much more the downfield guy, and Carnell is much more the move the chains type of guy. But just in terms of, you talk about the players on the team, you make a list of ask the average Ohio State fan, like who's the best wide receiver on the team, and who are the best players on offense, skill players on offense. And it takes them a little longer to get to that name than it probably should, or if you look at the productivity, then it probably should. He's the third most productive receiver. He also was, you look at the stats for Tennessee, and I think he would have been the leading or almost the leading receiver for Tennessee, which had a decent offense. And I think, Oregon, Tez Johnson has much bigger numbers, but, Carnell Tate would start on Oregon. I think he would play, and I think you could kind of take the 6 wide receivers on these teams and jumble them up. And I don't think there would be anyone outside of Jeremiah Smith, who's kind of always the guy who's like, whoa. I don't know that there's anyone that you'd be like, this guy clearly doesn't belong in that class of players. This is the best wide receiver unit Oregon's going to face all season, period, full stop, no matter how long they play. And this is the best wide receiver unit that Ohio State's going to play all year, period, full stop, no matter how long they play.
I was talking with somebody earlier, and we'll get to the super chat here in a second. Imagine if Marvin Harrison had come back this year. What does Jeremiah Smith do in terms of, is he still a 1,000-yard receiver? Because try focusing, like, how long before there's bracketing of Jeremiah Smith and you leave and you're like, well, I guess we're going to have to leave Marvin Harrison one-on-one. Like, what is the situation there? I mean,
Travion Henderson runs for 7.3 miles. That's what happens if you've got those guys, because you can't bracket everyone, and you can't even just bracket someone every play. But you might see defenses playing.
We must first stop the pass.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you're in like the prevent all game basically. It's that's a dangerous thought.
It's unfortunate where you have these so close to happening, like Jackson Smith and Jigba playing in 2022. Like if that would have been able to happen with the receivers they had, the numbers that they could have done with CJ Stroud. So you just kind of miss out on those. Like the one that everybody talks about, Greg Oden leaving and then Costa Kufas coming in. Like you could, everybody's wishing like you could have had that high low in the post. Tom, we've talked about it for years. Like just imagine what those two guys could have done. A deeper cut if you want, like Jimmy Jackson, if he had come back for his senior year and been able to play with Greg Simpson, Killer Macon, Nate Wilburn, like those guys, Gerald Aker.
Jimmy Johnson knew what he was doing is what I'm taking away from that conversation. The Mavs are really
Jimmy
bad.
Jackson.
Yeah. Did I say Jimmy
Johnson?
Well,
you're a NASCAR fan. I'm sorry.
He was a football coach, Tony. Please. From Robbie at YouTube. Robbie at YouTube. Do you feel good about our kicker in warmer Pasadena weather?
You just like, I just realized something.
He put it in parentheses, and there was an exclamation point. That's how you read an exclamation point.
I thought that was just you realizing it. I'm sorry.
Robbie at YouTube. That's how you read it if there's a question. Robbie at YouTube. It is your birthday. That's how you read it with a period. Okay. So now we've learned about punctuation. Moving on. Do we feel good about our kicker and warmer Pasadena weather? Did weather play a role in field goal misses the last few games? I think it's possible, and without sitting there and breaking down kicking mechanics, which I am not qualified to do.
I'll do it.
Or being in the 6 inches between the ear holes on his helmet, which I am also not qualified to do. You can't know for sure, but when you look at how just punting went in the first round of the college football playoff, there were a bunch of punters who looked like they were trying to kick cinder blocks, and I don't know quite why that is, but the punting average is just I haven't done a study on this or anything, but just watching the games, just anecdotally, it just felt like punters kept kicking 38-yard punts, and it was like, that looked crappy. What happened there? And so I think it would be natural to think that might carry over to kicking a field goal. Now, Dominic Zavada, the Michigan kicker, had no problem. Now he's probably the best kicker in the nation, so that's something. And Tennessee made one field goal, but I don't think it was super long.
Right.
That was pretty. So, it can't hurt having it be 70 degrees and sunny, and the field is going to be great. The field's always great at the Rose Bowl. So it should all of that should play in his favor, in Jaden Fielding's favor, and Atticus Sappington's favor as well, Oregon's kicker. These should be pretty much perfect conditions. So if you miss it, okay, then you can cross weather off the list of explanations. It should be nothing but good conditions and good fields from here on out. For Ohio State or Oregon, whoever wins this game, it's Rose Bowl, Dome in Texas, Dome in Georgia. So it should be nothing but perfect field conditions, little winds, no. So if you miss at that point and it's not a bad snap or a bad hold or a blocked kick, like, well, then it's definitely it's on the middle.
Yeah, and I don't think the miss against Tennessee was weather related. That was just
Oh,
56-yard
no.
related. And then we had the 2 misses against Michigan and the miss against Nebraska. I don't recall how long that Nebraska kick was. But trying to get into the mind of the kicker, Tom, you give him like a Rorschach test and like, what do you see here? And he's like, laces in. What do you see in this one? Laces in.
How'd you get that picture of my parents fighting?
So don't mess with kickers.
All right, here's another one from the attitude. No parentheses, no exclamation points. Just a couple question marks in this one. In case Will Howard goes down, have we seen enough from Devin to feel good about our passing game and throwing the receiving core? Also, is Sayan ready to take over if needed? I don't know that I have enough information to answer that question. We're at the end of the season. We have seen Devin Howard play. Devin Howard, you go back and look at his career
Devin
stat.
Brown.
Yeah.
Devin Howard is an NBA player.
Tony, it's been a long week.
He's NASCAR.
I got up early this morning, Tony. It's been a long week. Me brain no work good.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Devin Brown. I want not okay. I want you, Tony, and you at home. Oh, I'm going to give Tony a sec. I'm going to give everyone put in the comments without looking. Completions, attempts, yards, touchdowns, interceptions, career for Devin Brown.
Oh, career
for Devin Brown.
I think
no. Let the people give the people a moment. I'm going to tell you, it's less than you think because he feels like he's been around for a long time, and he's been in the QB battle for a long time. He's always right there. If he's not the starter, he's the backup. So I'm sure. Like when you think about it, it's like, well, how many games he started? Has he started? Because he's been right there so long. He started 3, 4, 5 games. No, he started one and he got hurt immediately. I will read them to you. 27 completions, career. 48 attempts, career. 331 yards, career. 3 touchdowns, 1 pick. That's like 27 for 48, 331, 3 touchdowns, and 1 pick. That's the line of a single game. If Ohio State falls behind 17-0 in the first quarter, has to throw their way back to get competitive. Like 47.
That's Kyle McCord against Pitt.
Yeah. Oh, well, no, because there weren't
whatever,
7 interceptions. But
any game, like I'm just picking a random ACC game.
27 for 48 would be a game where Ohio State is, that's like a Dwayne Haskins line, like a bad Dwayne Haskins game from 2018. That's a game. Yeah. And that's Devin Brown's career at Ohio State. So Devin Brown, I feel like we've been talking about him for so long, talking about him for so much, because there was a sort of discourse that, like, actually secretly, there was a big conspiracy, because actually secretly he was the best quarterback on the roster, and it was a big conspiracy to keep him from playing, and so so he's just been part of this conversation for so long, but he's never actually really been asked to do it on the field in any kind of consistent manner. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's bizarre to say about a guy who's been in the conversation this long and been so close to being the starter this long. I don't know.
I don't think do we have the confidence in him, or does the team? Because I don't. They will change the offense if Will Howard would go down, and then it becomes. I wouldn't be shocked if they need to throw the ball, that it becomes a Julian Sayin thing. Even though Devin Brown knows the offense, the thing about Julian Sayin is that he continues to progress, and they've continued to build him up, knowing that he may need to play if something happens with Devin Brown in the portal. So they're trying to get him ready as well. We have not seen enough of Devin Brown to think that, yeah, it would just be business as usual. He had a nice touchdown throw to Jeremiah Smith this year, and that was in part because of Jeremiah Smith making an incredible catch. But I wouldn't expect them to go out there and just start slinging it around like they do with Will Howard. Maybe they can do some play action and go deep and stuff like that, and then you throw some more 50-50 balls. And whereas now, like, they're not really 50-50 balls because the guys are open downfield.
Right.
This might be a situation where it's like, okay, now you got to go make a play because the pinpoint stuff isn't necessarily there, and the progressions aren't necessarily as quick and as decisive, and sometimes you're going to miss the first or the second read. I just don't think they would be all that comfortable throwing it around.
Are we having a problem with mics? Or?
People were saying there's a little bit of a static, but I think
Well, there's also like a weird humming noise coming from the.
maybe
That might be it. I don't know.
one inch.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think even Julian saying is a little bit of an unknown right now because it's you've heard so much about him and everyone is very optimistic about him, but he hasn't really had to do it. He's never taken a really truly meaningful snap in his career, so that would be asking a lot. But
Well, and I did ask him yesterday, would you be good going in? And Tom, you'll be surprised to know, he said he'd be okay.
yeah, I bet. Yeah, and no quarterback is you don't get to
I
be
don't want to go in.
Yeah, no, you don't get to be a high level quarterback without without thinking like, I got this for sure.
I guarantee Lincoln Keenholz would have said the same thing last year prior to the Cotton Bowl. Yeah, I'm good. I'm ready to go in. If they need me, I'm here.
Yeah.
And you saw that that's not always the case.
No, I've seen a lot of people in the comments asking about fan makeup of this of the stadium. My expectation. I don't feel like I've seen a statistically significant sample of fans.
I have seen none.
Well,
I've been
seen
sequestered.
some walking around downtown and taking the train out. I saw a few Oregon fans on the train. Obviously, saw a lot of Ohio State fans at the marching band rehearsal. But I don't have anything to base an estimate on. But I would assume you're going to have more Oregon fans than Ohio State fans. Oregon fans have had a month basically to buy tickets. They knew they were coming here to buy tickets, buy flights, get hotels, and Ohio State fans have had a week. And it really was less than a week because by the time they won on the 21st, it was basically the 22nd. And then when are you flying out here? The 29th, 30th, something like that. Oh, and by the way, and there's a fairly major holiday between those. So there's, you're doing a lot of stuff. So Ohio State has alumni and fans everywhere. And I know there are going to be plenty of Ohio State fans there. But just because of the logistics of the event, I would be shocked if there were as many Ohio State fans as Oregon fans. Is it going to be 70-30? Is it going to be 60-40? I don't know. I don't know that, but I'm not expecting. I saw someone saying they weren't expecting Ohio State to go silent count or something like that. Like there shouldn't be. It shouldn't be 90,000
Right.
Oregon fans. And the other thing is, this is a stadium that is built in a way that it doesn't get that loud down on the field. It's just because of the architecture.
It's supposed to be nice, not loud.
Yes, you think about the architecture of the place and Autzen Stadium. What makes Autzen Stadium loud? Well, you got like some stuff going straight up on the sides, and you got that roof over the visiting sideline on the press box side that holds all that noise in it. The Rose Bowl, there's some suites and stuff with the press box, but it's not. It's a big open bowl spread way out. If you're in the last row of that stadium, you are a long way from the field. And there's a lot of area for that noise to just kind of dissipate. So, I don't think it's going to be a game where crowd noise is going to play a huge factor. Like, sure, could you have a false start or something? Yeah, sure. But I don't think you're going to have. I don't think you're going to have, massive crowd noise disruptions of the game or anything like that.
No, I would agree with that. I am interested to see what it is. Is it 65-35? I've had people ask me what it's like out here, and it's like I have been in a hotel, so I do not know. I have not seen people walking around.
There's going to be a big number of fans or people there that are unaffiliated too, that just go to the Rose Bowl. That's just what they've done on their local. They go to the Rose Bowl. They generally pull for the underdog.
Yeah. So in this case, if they're pulling for the underdog, is the underdog the team that is number one in the country, or is it the team that is the betting favorite for the game? Because this is a game where it feels like you have two overdogs, and I don't think there is an underdog.
Yeah, Dan Lanning is not acting like an underdog, but probably telling his team. Can you believe they think that? I'm sure he's using the Vegas number a little bit to motivate his team.
All right. So just. Yeah, do we want to hit some questions?
Yeah, I mean, because if we're trying to get out of here,
so Robert Howard wants to know, how do you expect Ohio State's pass rush to impact this game?
when we watched the Tennessee game, we saw right away the tackles for Tennessee were going to have an issue. I think these are tackles that are better. These offensive tackles are better. But right now, Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau are kind of clicking into gear as you would hope they would. But also, I still think this is a lot of the blitzing and getting to Dylan Gabriel that way and creating some chaos and getting the timing off and seeing what you can do there. And then you have to tackle him, because if you don't tackle him, then you've just, you know what, now let's just, you've inserted something into the situation that maybe you shouldn't have by getting him out of the pocket, and now you have to cover those receivers even more, and you have to scramble, and they're going to take off. And so now I think the best part for that for Ohio State is Dylan Gabriel can't necessarily zip it 55 yards on a line on a guy breaking on a scramble route. But again, they have to get him down. When there are opportunities to touch him and to get him, like Jeremiah Smith says, if I could touch the ball, I should catch it. If you can touch Dylan Gabriel, you need to bring him down. And if you don't, bad things are going to happen.
Yeah, they did not tackle him for a loss at any point during that first game. So an interesting stat, Andy Backstrom tweeted it out. I retweeted it earlier today. It says Ohio State's use of 5+ pass rushers, games 1 through 6, so through the first Oregon game, 10 pass rushes, 8 hurries, 3 quarterback hits, 2 sacks. So through the first 6 games, 10 times they rushed 5 or more guys. Through games 7 through 13, so the last 7 games, so it's slightly more than the first sample. You went from 10 to 36 times. You went from 8 to 25 hurries, 3 quarterback hits to 8, 2 sacks to 15. Yeah. I mean, it is a much more aggressive Ohio State defense, and I would expect them to come out and try to start aggressively. And you may figure out, like, hey, that doesn't work with this guy because he's been playing football since the Coolidge administration and has seen every possible combination of blitz and is also really athletic and elusive. And so this just doesn't work, and we've got to come up with a different plan. But I think you're going to start coming out aggressively with that pass rush. The matchup I'm looking at as like a keep an eye on this is right tackle Johnny Cornelius for Oregon, who we've seen. I don't know that we might have seen him give up a sack or two in the games that we've watched. He's also had a couple times where it's like, boy, that was a real obvious hold right on the edge that didn't get called. It's not to the degree that we saw with John Campbell, who was the right tackle for Tennessee, that we kind of went, oh, this dude's about to have a bad time, and he did. And it's not to that degree, but I think you got to remember, as a lefty, the right tackle is Dylan Gabriel's blind side. Normally you think of the left tackle as the blind side. The right tackle is the blind side. So, if you can get Jack Sawyer coming off the blind side and he gets, can get around the edge, whatever it is, you get one blind side hit, knock the ball free. That could be a game-changing play right there. That's the thing. I think you're going to see more pressure. I think you're going to see stuff coming up the middle. You're going to see linebackers, all that stuff. Jack Sawyer and a Johnny Cornelius, keep an eye on that one. That's the one that I think might be where you could have a difference-making play. I
just kicked in myself right now because we did our bold prediction show yesterday, and I wanted to for 3 points, Tom, Jack Sawyer is held, and his tackle is flagged for holding Jack Sawyer for the first time since 2021. An offensive lineman gets flagged for holding Jack Sawyer, because it has not happened again, as you have said, since 2021 when Jack Sawyer was a freshman, some 1,600 snaps ago for Sawyer. And
Oregon's offensive line has not been called for a hold since the second game or something like that.
Yeah, it's
some,
So we will see. Something will have to give in that one, or I guess nothing will.
Raviata Tube says, is Carnell Tate not getting much reps by design, or are we waiting for him to show something else in practice to get him more reps? Coaches seem to rave about him, but his touches don't seem to match the rave. Now, he's getting reps.
Yeah.
He's not getting as many touches, but his stats are not terrible. I think he's at 600 yards receiving, something
41
like that.
catches, 600 yards.
Yeah, 41 catches, 600 yards. I mean, that's a perfectly good season. And he's playing a bunch. And when they want to get him the ball, you look at the Northwestern game. He's a Chicago native, going back to play in his hometown. That was, speaking of bold predictions, that was maybe the easiest bold prediction all season, was Carnell Tate's going to catch a touchdown. And Carnell Tate, I believe, got 2 touchdowns in that game and almost had a third one. He got tackled at like the 1 on a third one. If they want to get him the ball, he's a great receiver. This is what we talk about when we're talking about Ohio State's wide receivers are deeper than virtually anyone else's corners. where if you may have a number one corner who can kind of go toe to toe with Jeremiah Smith, a certain percentage of the time. You may have a corner a slot guy who can go toe to toe with Emeka Egbuka a certain percentage of the time. Your third corner, you don't have three corners as good as the three wide receivers of Ohio State. Like, no one in the country has. And that's because the third wide receiver of Ohio State is really good. Now, if you didn't have Jeremiah Smith on this team, Carnell Tate has more than 41 catches and 600 yards. Carnell Tate probably has 60 catches and 900 yards. But you have Jeremiah Smith on the team. None of that has any reflection on Carnell Tate. You mentioned Marvin Harrison earlier. Where I go back to last year, Marvin Harrison, talking about the fact that Carnell Tate, as a true freshman, was ahead of where Marvin Harrison was as a true freshman. Like, Carnell Tate was ahead of where Marvin Harrison was at that point in his career. But Marvin Harrison didn't have Jeremiah Smith on the team. He didn't have a senior Emeka Egbuka on the team. Some of this is just sort of context. I don't think I have seen anything all year to make me think Carnell Tate might not be as good as we thought. No, he's every bit as good as you thought. He's just kind of, I think, really underappreciated.
Yeah, and I don't remember who said it in terms of, it was Emeka Egbuka. Somebody asked about Carnell Tate being a number 3, and Emeka's like, we don't have a number 3 kid. Carnell Tate is not a number 3. There are 3 number 1s right now. And in terms of the reps, I just went and looked at the snap counts from Buddy Dan Hope at 11 Warriors. Jeremiah Smith this year leads the receivers with 620 snaps. Emeka Egbuka 601, Carnell Tate 567. Like, he's right there.
Yeah.
This is just a situation where if you're not throwing it to Jeremiah Smith, why are you not throwing it to Jeremiah Smith?
Mm-hmm.
And so if I'm throwing it to somebody else, I'm not throwing it to Jeremiah Smith. But again, 42 receptions for a receiver is at Ohio State over the last 2 decades is a pretty decent amount. Like, it would, in many years, it would lead the team. And this year, these years now with the Ryan Day passing attack, it's just there are only one football to go around, and you're talking about 2 other really, really good receivers, and he'll be there next year. He's going to have 60, 70, 80 catches next year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Casino Scoop says, heard some of the Ducks are ill. Is that true? Now, we keep getting asked this, and the only place no one's talking about it here, really, other than the fact that, like, are you getting asked about this?
Right, yeah. I have not talked to any of the Oregon writers about anything going through right now. I have talked to people about it went through before.
Yes.
For the Big Ten championship game being something that was talked about, but
we were around the team yesterday. You did not have people coughing and hacking and looking like they wanted to curl up in a ball and go to sleep. It seemed fine. Someone looked at my video. I tweeted out a video of Mateo Uyunglele talking about pass rushing and all that kind of stuff, and he was talking kind of quietly, and people were like, oh, look, you can barely hear him. He must be really sick. It's like, I have nothing to base this on. What does his voice normally sound like? Is he normally quiet? I don't know. It was just, I have not seen or heard anything here to make me think that this is anything that's real and substantial. All the guys that were up there at the podium, which was, all the star players for Oregon, like all the notable players for Oregon, they all seemed fine. They all looked fine. I just don't think I don't have any reason to think that this is anything more than either people conflating the Big Ten championship game thing with now, or people were sick a few days ago, but they're not sick now. I don't know. I
still don't know the origin of this, and I've asked, like, where did you first hear this? I saw it on Twitter or something, and it's just, you can't trace this. Can you trace it and track it to the agent X or the patient zero of where this originally transpired? I don't know.
It was Mikey from the old Life commercials, and he told me right before he did the Pop Rocks and the Coke. Is my understanding.
R.I.P. to the king. All right, what do we got here?
Sadly,
Geiger Lee says
he likes
loved the bold.
Stepped on my joke.
Sorry,
the worst.
Geiger Lee loved the bold prediction show this week, guys. That was a fun one we did over at the practice facility before Ohio State got there. Really nice setting. I did some fantastic bold predictions after this. after you watch the stuff that Tom has told you to go watch, go watch that. Bold predictions dropped that yesterday, and it's as bold as ever. Probably the most bold.
It's certainly somewhere on the scale.
It's a show.
It is a show. As I said on Twitter this morning, watch this show with me and Ross. It will make you a smarter. Then once you're like, I might be getting too smart, watch the bold prediction show. It will fix it.
There's this TikTok of a single mom talking. She's got like a 4-year-old daughter, and she's like, I'm a bad mom because I'm feeding my kid Pizza Hut. And the kid is like, you're a good mom. Say it. And so she's like, I'm a good mom. When we talk bad about the bold prediction show, the comments are always like, this is not a bad show, guys. This is a good show. This is not a stupid show. Say it. Say this is not a stupid show.
It is the Pizza Hut of shows.
I'd rather you say it's a stupid show.
Murphy Serafino says over under 10.5 targets for Jeremiah Smith tomorrow.
Under that one.
Yeah.
Because he went off on Tennessee and it was still only probably 8 targets. I don't know that they kept all of the targets correctly.
It was probably 8 targets because there were a couple that he didn't catch, and I think he was listed as 6 targets on 6 catches. So he was probably 8 targets, and he only played 3 quarters in that game. So I still think you get to a point where if you've targeted him 6 times in the first half, 7 times in the first half, Oregon's going to either it's not working or Oregon's going to adjust and say, literally anyone else beat us. We are going to take away Michael Jordan and the rest of the team has to beat us. I think you might get there in terms of targets plus rushes, like touches plus attempted passes too, however you want to,
touches plus targets.
Targets plus rushes is probably a decent way to lay it out. It's just, on base slugging, his weighted on base average, his expected weighted on base average.
What is that, Jeremiah Smith's WAR?
Jeremiah
pretty high.
Over the replacement level wide receivers in the Big Ten. How many wins is he worth? I'm going to say about 4. Have you watched Big Ten football this year? The replacement level is not tremendous.
I've seen them beating up on the SEC.
Well, yes, but I mean, how do they do against real conferences, Tony?
Well, that's fair point.
J.VR says, how do you feel about Ohio State going into this game and score prediction?
I guess we could get to our score predictions right now. We've sent them all in. They have all been published at BuckeyeHuddle.com, so you can read our thoughts there.
How much is your first month of Buckeye Huddle?
The first month of Buckeye Huddle is $4.99, and this story here is not even behind the paywall, so you can go check that out. But of course, we were talking about this and much more behind the paywall at the Buckeye Huddle message board presented by Jeffrey Reese Columbus. But I believe my score prediction is my thought process was this is going to be a better Ohio State defense. So if the Ohio State defense gave up 32 points last time, they will give up fewer points this time. And the Ohio State offense could score the same, could score more, whatever. So I went 34-24 Ohio State, Tom.
You did, and I'm just looking through. I think you have the biggest margin of victory for Ohio State of anyone. Everyone on our staff picked Ohio State, which I swore to myself when I saw the bracket that I was going to pick Oregon to win this game. And then
you watched the Tennessee game.
Well, I watched the Tennessee game, but also I went back and rewatched the Big Ten championship game, and I also looked at some statistical profiles.
The
Wisconsin game, and there's always a reason for, the Wisconsin game as well. It was the 8th game in a row, and they had the Big Ten hosed them with their schedule, and they had to go back and forth across the country, which is, Tony, totally unforeseeable when you join a conference literally based across the country. But there was and then they had the flu for the Penn State game, and so there's always a reason. But you look at the stats, and the stats say the worst unit on the field of the 4 major units is is Oregon's defense, because Ohio State's offense, Oregon's offense, Ohio State's defense are all elite, top 5 nationally elite. Oregon's defense is it's fine. It's not bad. It's just it's if you had to rank them, it's the Ohio State and Oregon offenses are both top 5. The Ohio State defense is top 1, and the Oregon defense is top 25. It's fine. It's not bad. It's just fine. And so when you look at that, it's well, it feels like there's one mismatch potentially here, and I think you're going to see Dan Lanning get into his bag of tricks, as always, and you're going to see a bunch of nonsense on special teams, and you're going to see you're going to see the swinging gate, which always I look at. Every time I see that, my eyes just roll back in my head because it's like the most high school BS. But it's like, but they'll get stuff on it. So it's like, if it's stupid and it works, it's not stupid. That's kind of Oregon special teams.
Right.
So you'll probably make up something there with that. I picked Ohio State 28-24. The rematch games are almost always a little lower scoring than the originals. And I think you're going to have, I think it's going to be close throughout. I think it's going to be a fantastic game. I think it might be one of the best, most dramatic, most exciting games of the playoff, because it was one of the best, most dramatic, most exciting games of the regular season. And why would it be any different here? I just think Ohio State is the Oregon defense is like just that much, not quite good enough to me to have them have to go to a neutral site. And then we also don't know how does a team respond after 3 weeks off. Mm-hmm. Normally when you had a month off for a bowl game, the other team also had a month off for a bowl game. So it's like they're rusty, we're all rusty together. Will Oregon be rested and come out fired up and in great shape, or will Oregon be a little rusty? Because Ohio State is kind of in a game. It's not quite a game week rhythm. It's like a game week rhythm plus a couple days, but it's kind of a game week rhythm. And I think it wouldn't shock me if Ohio State came out looking, Oregon came out just a little off, just a tiny bit off. And in a game like this, that might be enough to be the difference.
Yeah, it's going to take them a little bit to catch up to the speed, maybe. Kevin, what does your score go?
38-31. I won't shout my reasoning behind it. I just think it's going to be a classic slugfest. Just haymakers left and right.
All right. Do we have any questions left? Do we want to rapid fire this?
Yeah.
Or should we?
Doug Shepard says, shame this game is in the quarterfinals. This game could very easily be the national championship game. I mean, very easily. I think there's a good chance that whoever wins this game, this is the best opponent they play. Doesn't mean they're going to, doesn't mean that you win this and you're just going to cruise for the last two. You got two more good opponents ahead. But I think in terms of pure talent, overall team, whoever wins this game, this is the most talented team they are going to face in their run to however far they go in the playoff.
I would agree. El Suzabo, does Ryan Day seem tight to you? He kind of does to me in interviews. So serious, doesn't seem to be having fun. That worries me, frankly. And this again is just what do you see and what do you want to see? And for some, you'd rather see a serious, because I shot video of the Ohio State players a couple days ago back in Columbus doing their handshakes before the warm-ups and stuff, and people got upset because this is not a serious team. They're not focused. And you see, like, Ryan Day sure seemed focused. This is just something that is an annoyance to the coaches. They'd rather be anywhere else. But also, like, what do you want to portray as the head coach? And so, I think they're serious. This is a business trip. It is not the typical Rose Bowl.
No, this is not the typical fun Rose Bowl. And they were still they were joking around at times during the press conference. This is just like when you have a list of stuff to do, and then someone like you've got a project due at work, and it's due at the end of the day, and someone grabs you and is like, "Hey, can I borrow you for 10 minutes? I got an idea to run past you," and it's not anything related to what you have due for your project at the end of the day, but it's like this is someone who's 2 levels up from you on the org chart, so it's like you kind of just got to grit your teeth and do it. Like Ryan Day's boss's boss at the College Football Playoff Committee says, well, you have to go do this press conference, and Dan Lanning, you have to do this press conference. So it's the last friggin' thing in the world they want to do, because they got asked all of these questions yesterday. But this is like, well, we have to have this thing because the media is here, so we have to have you come sit up in front. Now sit in this chair, and then afterwards stand up, stand next to the trophy. Okay, video people in the back. Okay, hey, now the photographer's in the front. All right, now shake hands. Okay, all right, thank you guys for coming. And it was the shortest handshake I've seen in the world, and I don't think it was any kind of animosity between the two coaches. Like they get along fine, but it was just like, I got crap to do. Like, I got to go. That's that. And like, it's a big game. Think about if you're Ryan Day or you're Dan Lanning and you lose this game, what is your next 12 months like? What's your next even just 3 months like before you can get to spring ball and start changing the conversation. It's, well, you thought you had the best roster in America,
Right.
Ryan Day. You thought you had the number one team in America, Dan Lanning, but there you go. You flamed out in the quarterfinals.
Number one seed couldn't even win a playoff game.
Yeah. And so, and I mean, heaven help Oregon if they get run over. I mean, if Ohio State runs the ball really well on them, and you're going to get the, oh, look, Oregon with the shiny helmets and their fancy uniforms. Oh, look at their costumes. They sure are shiny, but boy, they sure are soft. You're going to get that crap. And if Ohio State loses, it's going to be, Ryan, they can't win the big one.
$20 million.
Yeah, right. And whoever it is, and again, we talked about this earlier in terms of narrative. It's like everyone wants to jump on whoever loses, and then they're going to jump on whoever loses. And that's just, and the coaches know that, and the coaches know they're going to have to deal with a bunch of crap from boosters if they lose, and they're going to have, so yeah, they're both really focused. Dan Lanning was very clearly, like, Dan Lanning had the, like, you could see the thought bubble over his head. Smile so that people think that you're nice, because he was up here smiling the whole time. He didn't want to be, you think Dan Lanning wanted to be in this room? He didn't want to be here, and that's fine. But like, Dan Lanning is gonna be smile. He's gonna be happy. He's gonna be high. He's gonna be the young, high energy guy. And Ryan Day is the guy who's like, I want to go back and I want to go do more football stuff right now because I have a very big football game.
Yeah,
tomorrow.
and that pretty much covers the question, the comment from James DePore as well, who took the other side about. Dan Lanning seems stressed. The last one is from Vented. If Ohio State was an Alabama situation tonight against, let's say, a 7-5 Clemson, would you be furious or not care? Here's the thing. Once you get into a bowl game and players are opting out, I mean, last year's bowl game against the Cotton Bowl against Missouri was extremely interesting to me, just to see how they would handle such a farce of a roster. And so, like, that game does not matter to me at all. And this one probably wouldn't either, because it's not the same team that played during the regular season. So this is a scrimmage with the stats that count.
Right. And when you're in the situation that Michigan was in today, and okay, now Jordan Marshall's your starting running back because Cole Mullings isn't there, and Donovan Edwards, I guess, wasn't there. And so, okay, so now you've got the freshman running back. Well, guess what? This is a great opportunity for him to get 15 practices and for him to get some game reps and all that kind of stuff. That's what that game's about. Like, you win the ReliaQuest Bowl. Like, that's wonderful. Congratulations. It's sad that they don't still have a boomerang on the trophy for that game, but you think that one's going to get a real position of prominence in the Michigan trophy lobby?
No.
I suspect that it will not.
No.
It's just like, that's a game. It's like, well, it's better to win that than lose it. But really the benefit of that game is all the crap that happened in the lead up to that game and the reps that the guys get, much more than like, oh boy, we can really build off momentum off of a bowl game is nonsense.
Tell me about Missouri's momentum after beating Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl last year, and look what happened to them. Like, these kinds of games, sometimes you used to be able to build off of them.
Yeah.
When you're bringing back the same team. Teams are no longer the same team from year to year.
Yeah, and even then, it wasn't like you won your bowl game, and everyone who won a bowl game saw a +2 bump in their win total the next year. It was just kind of like, narratively, it was a more satisfying offseason because you weren't dealing with, you go back to the 90s and how many John Cooper teams were, well, sure, you're 11-0, but we all know you're going to lose the last 2 games, and then you lose the last 2 games, and oh, here we go again, and it's old 11-2 John.
Good times. Yeah. So,
All
right, that'll do it. Well, thank you all for tuning in on this live show. That's why you want to hit the bell to be notified when we go live. Subscribe to the channel. Before you go, though, hit the thumbs up if you have not done so, and I know most of you have, so we appreciate that. And as I said earlier, find us at BuckeyeHuddle.com. We'll be talking about this game. We'll be talking about everything that happens after, because there is going to be, one way or another, a ton of stuff that happens after tomorrow that we will be talking about and covering. $4.99 for your first month will get you through a whole bunch of stuff there. So please sign up there, say hello to us, check us out on the Buckeye Huddle message board presented by Jeff Ruby's Columbus. Thank you all for tuning in, and we will talk to you guys later.